The story did not begin with the art, or the new name, or the rumors spreading like wildfire across fan pages and comment sections. It began much earlier, long before anyone knew how deeply Amy Slayton would transform, before the seasons, before the breakups, before the weight loss milestones, before she stood with a spray-painted Ken in her hand and declared a new identity for herself. Her journey had been messy and human and painfully real, unfolding in front of millions who saw pieces of their own struggles reflected back at them. But now, as the world leaned closer to decipher the hints she had dropped, it felt as if Amy was stepping into a new version of herself, one she had been trying to carve out for years, even when everything around her kept falling apart. In the quiet corners of her home, where paint-splattered tables and half-finished canvases sat beside toys her sons left scattered everywhere, Amy found something she hadn't felt in a very long time, a sense of direction. It wasn't dramatic or loud like the chaos that had surrounded her marriage or the heartbreak that followed it. It was calm, slow, healing in ways she hadn't expected. For so long, her identity had been tied tightly to her weight, her role as a mother, her struggles, and the opinions of everyone watching. But standing there with brushes dipped in bright colors and salt shimmering under studio lights, she finally asked herself who she wanted to be. Not as a reality star, not as the girl who drank 10 cans of sodies a day, not as the woman fighting to save a marriage that was already sinking, but as Amy. And it was in that very space, that fragile but hopeful space, that Brian entered her life. He hadn't come with grand gestures or sweeping promises. No spotlight, no scenes designed for ratings, no pressure to fit into a storyline. He arrived quietly. As someone who listened more than he spoke, who let her talk without interrupting, who didn't flinch when she cried or rambled nervously or spiraled into self-doubt. He didn't treat her like a spectacle or a burden or a project. To him, she was simply Amy, messy, creative, unpredictable, soft-hearted Amy. But long before their gentle connection took shape, long before she felt her heart settle into a steadier rhythm with him, Amy had been living inside the storm of her breakup with Michael. That ending had not been clean or peaceful. It had been loud, filled with arguments that left her drained, nights she stayed awake replaying every conversation, days when she wondered if she was failing her kids, failing herself, failing everyone who believed in her. Divorce was not something she ever expected to walk through, and the weight of it pressed on her in ways she didn't show the cameras. The crying in the bathroom, the frustration of trying to co-parent while emotionally exhausted, the loneliness of lying in bed knowing she had to rebuild everything from scratch. It all shaped her in ways the world never fully saw. But in the cracks where things broke apart, something new began to grow. Her art, at first just doodles and side projects, slowly became a language she could express herself through. She experimented with salt, glitter, ink, textured paints, even found objects like bottle caps and old fabric. She mixed colors that reminded her of sunsets she wished she had time to watch, ocean blues she'd only seen online, neon shades that captured the chaotic energy of her thoughts. And for the first time in years, people weren't just asking her about her weight or her relationships. They were asking about her art, her process, her ideas. That attention felt different, gentler, genuine. The more she created, the more she realized she was building something bigger than just hobby pieces. She was shaping an identity, a persona, a world where she could be expressive and imperfect and bold without anyone judging the number on a scale or the decisions she made in her personal life. She began signing her pieces with swirls of gold paint, shapes that didn't always form perfect letters but carried emotion and confidence she didn't always feel. And then came the can. It was old, a leftover symbol from a past she was trying to outgrow, one tied to years of unhealthy habits, years she and Tammy had filled with gallons of diet soda, comforting themselves with the bubbles and artificial sweetness they once believed were harmless. Sodies, they used to call them, laughing as they cracked open another can. It was one of their oldest inside jokes, one fans never forgot, a phrase that stuck even after the sisters transformed their lifestyles. Their reliance on sodies had become a symbol of who they used to be.
Heavy. Lost.
Out of control. Drinking them like water, because real water didn't feel comforting enough. When Amy picked up that can and sprayed it black, covering the shiny aluminum with thick strokes of paint, she felt like she was burying an old version of herself. She didn't hide it. She didn't pretend she was someone different. Years of emotional eating, years of keeping the peace, years of playing mediator between chaos and expectations, they all caught up to her. And when the noise of her old life finally faded, she was left with a blank canvas. One that terrified her. One that thrilled her. Brian entered her life quietly, without the dramatic entrance of a reality TV love interest. He didn't swoop in with promises or grand gestures. Instead, he showed up in the small ways. The good morning texts, the calls to check if she'd eaten, the gentle reminders to rest, the way he listened when she spoke about things no one else bothered to ask. For Amy, whose worth had often been tied to either her weight or her mothering, this simple presence felt revolutionary. But with affection came fear. And with fear came self-protection. Amy never wanted to repeat the mistakes of her past, loving too quickly, trusting too deeply, and giving away the parts of herself she hadn't even learned to keep. So she held Brian at arm's length, even as their bond deepened. She kept parts of her life private, especially the one budding passion that had become an unexpected anchor: art. It began as stress relief. A few paints, some canvases, a handful of impulsive strokes made in moments of frustration or insomnia. Then came experimentation. Bright colors first, splattered in chaotic bursts, then softer tones layered with surprising care. Amy found herself mesmerized by the texture of salt crystals embedded in the paint, forming patterns like frost on a winter window. She didn't realize she was good. Not truly. Not until people online started noticing. One of her earliest posts, a messy, vibrant swirl of neon and pastel, received comments that caught her off guard. "This is actually beautiful. You've got talent, girl.
Sell this."
I would buy it. Her heart fluttered at every kind word, as if some forgotten part of her had been waiting to be acknowledged. But it was the soda can piece that changed everything. Sitting at her dining table one late night, the kids finally asleep, Amy picked up an empty diet soda can, one of the last remaining relics of her old life. A sody, as she and Tammy had famously called them. A phrase that became a meme, a catchphrase, an embarrassing badge of their unhealthy past. Most people would have thrown it away. Amy painted it black. Then she picked up a gold marker and inscribed a signature, messy at first, then bold, confident, distinctly hers. Sod ALC Sod for Sodi. ALC for Amy Laverne Creations, a name she had whispered to herself for weeks before finally committing it to reality. The chem was more than an art supply. It was a symbol, a reminder of habits she was letting go, a piece of the girl she was before the world watched her struggle. A transformation in physical form, from something unhealthy to something expressive, maybe even beautiful. When she shared the piece online, the reaction was explosive. Some fans loved the creativity. Others questioned the symbolism. A few wondered if she still drank diet sodas. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. Amy was changing. She was evolving into someone new. Someone bold enough to sign her own name, brave enough to claim her own identity, clever enough to build a business and a future around the art she never knew she could create. But with growth came rumors. And with rumors came speculation. When Amy revealed the Laverne in her business name, fans immediately connected. She hadn't intended to draw, suggesting she'd secretly married Brian, that her new brand name was proof of a new life she was hiding. Amy didn't deny the speculation immediately. She didn't address it with anger or defensiveness. Instead, she posted a photo, soft, bright, filled with a quiet pride, of herself holding her first sold artwork beside a smiling fan named Katie. A new beginning, a new identity, a new nickname, a new world unfolding. But beneath that smile, a question lingered, one she knew fans would soon demand an answer to. Was Amy reinventing herself for love, or for herself. Names carry weight, sometimes more than people realize. They can define a person, protect them, or expose them. They can be symbols of where someone has been or declarations of where they're headed. For Amy Slayton, names had always been complicated. She'd worn many: daughter, sister, wife, mother, reality star, patient, fighter. Each came with its own expectations, its own burdens, its own chapters written into her life without her full permission. But this time, this name, this identity would be hers. Amy Laverne Creations. 3 words that rolled together like a promise. 3 words she whispered repeatedly in the privacy of her room, as if testing their power. 3 words she wrote on paper over and over until they stopped feeling foreign and started feeling like home. The Laverne wasn't random. It wasn't borrowed. It wasn't even new. It was personal. It was connected to someone she cared about, someone who gave her hope after a long stretch of darkness. Brian Scott Lohr. Fans pieced that connection together instantly, and it wasn't long before whispers of secret weddings and hidden rings spread across social media like wildfire. Amy could see the comments piling up beneath her posts. Did y'all get married already? Girl, why Brian's last name? Eyes, season 8 spoiler or what? That's suspicious timing, but the thing was, Amy didn't feel pressured to respond right away. For the first time in a long time, she felt grounded. Not shaken. Not thrown off balance. Not desperate to explain herself. She knew why she chose the name. She knew what it meant to her. And she knew that whatever the world assumed didn't change the truth. Yet the truth itself was tangled. Amy wasn't married. But she wasn't single either. She had feelings, warm, steady, growing slowly like flowers in the early days of spring, but she also had fear. Fear of repeating mistakes. Fear of rushing what didn't need to be rushed. Fear of building a future on a foundation still healing from cracks. Still, when she looked at her artwork, signed with her new identity, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not pride in survival. Not pride in weight loss or personal milestones. But pride in creation. In being an artist, accidentally or not, who had finally found a voice that wasn't filtered through someone else's expectations.
Painting became a lifeline.
A quiet rebellion. A way of controlling something in a life that had so often spiraled without warning. And with every new post, fans began to see that transformation. They noticed her confidence growing. They noticed her experimenting with colors instead of comfort food. They noticed her hands, once trembling from stress, now steady as she blended paints and sprinkled salt crystals like stardust across her canvases. But the biggest shift came with the Sodakin piece. The black paint, the gold lettering, the SOD, the ALC. It wasn't just art. It was a goodbye. A farewell to old habits that nearly swallowed her whole. A symbolic burial of the girl who once believed diet soda could fix her loneliness or fill the space where affection should have lived. To turn something destructive into art, that was healing in its purest form. And yet, even as she celebrated sales and compliments, even as she began planning a website for Amy Laverne Creations, Amy could sense something gathering in the background, something she hadn't fully acknowledged. Because with every proud moment came another wave of online speculation, Amy definitely spoiled season 8. She basically confirmed the wedding. She's hiding something. She's dropping hints on purpose. But Amy wasn't dropping hints. She was doing the opposite. She was trying to protect the story the cameras were still capturing, the real, messy, unfinished story of her and Brian. Behind the scenes, their relationship was evolving in ways even she couldn't always predict. There were moments of tenderness, late-night conversations, inside jokes, shared dreams. Moments of insecurity, fears from past relationships resurfacing. Moments of quiet hesitation, when Amy questioned whether she deserved peace after years of turbulence. And there were moments when she wondered whether she was allowed to be both a work in progress and someone's future. But the name, Laverne, wasn't a spoiler. It wasn't a code. It wasn't a hidden message for eagle-eyed fans. It was simply preparation. Preparation for who she might become. Preparation to not have to rebuild her brand again later. Preparation for the possibility of happiness that didn't destroy her this time. Amy had denied the marriage rumor softly, almost gently, not because she was hiding a scandal, but because she was hiding vulnerability. Because the truth was simple. She was not married. But she was hopeful. And hope, for Amy Slayton, was an identity stronger than any name she could ever write in gold paint. Amy never imagined that a simple hobby would grow into something that made her feel whole. Art had started as a distraction, a way to cope with heartbreak and the chaos of her divorce. But slowly, almost quietly, it became a doorway to a version of herself she'd never known. In the beginning, she painted with hesitation, dipping brushes into paint like someone testing the temperature of water. But the more she created, the more she realized she'd found something she was actually good at. Something she didn't have to apologize for. Something that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Even the salt, her signature element, was symbolic. Salt preserved. Salt healed. Salt burned when necessary. Salt reminded her of every wound, every tear, every lesson she had survived. And viewers loved it. Her Instagram page transformed, gaining followers not because she was Amy from 1,000-Pound Sisters, but because she was Amy the artist. People praised her bold colors, her unusual textures, her willingness to experiment. Others critiqued her choices, like when she spray-painted a soda can black and added it to a monochrome canvas. It's weird. It's cool. It's messy. It's unique. But to Amy, it was meaningful. That soda can represented the ghost of who she once was, the girl who drank 8 to 10 diet sodas a day, believing myths passed down from a mother who never understood nutrition. The girl who relied on carbonation instead of confidence. The girl who didn't know her worth. Painting it black wasn't darkness. It was closure. And signing it with SOD plus ALC was a declaration of evolution. Still, every time she posted a new piece, whispers of her relationship with Brian echoed through the comments. Where's Brian? Are y'all engaged? Did you already get married? Why Laverne though? People always searched for clues. People always wanted answers. But they didn't know what Amy knew, that her life had chapters she still couldn't speak about yet, not because she was hiding them, but because she was still living them. She remembered the early days after her split from Michael Halterman. The numbness. The panic. The overwhelming responsibility of raising 2 young boys while trying to rebuild a life that had crumbled faster than she could process. Back then, Brian wasn't a boyfriend. He was comfort. A steady voice. A gentle presence. Someone who didn't ask her to change, didn't expect her to perform, didn't demand anything except honesty. He wasn't trying to replace the father of her kids. He wasn't trying to fill the empty spaces in her marriage. He was simply there, in a way nobody had been for her in years. And that mattered. But it also scared her. Because anyone who had lived through heartbreak knew that new love, even peaceful love, could feel dangerous. It made you hope. It made you dream. It made you imagine things you weren't sure you deserved. So when people accused her of spoiling the show by using Brian's last name, she didn't feel embarrassed. She felt misunderstood. They weren't seeing the truth, that Amy was trying to prepare for her future without rushing into promises she wasn't ready to make. Still, every time she picked up a paintbrush, her hands steadied. Every time she signed Amy Laverne Creations, her heart warmed. Every time she saw Brian's supportive comments beneath her posts, she felt something safe. The kind of safe she had never felt in her entire adult life. But as her art grew, so did the speculation. More eyes. More questions. More assumptions. And while Amy tried to ignore the noise, one rumor kept resurfacing, one that pricked at her nerves every time she saw it. She married Brian on Halloween. There's proof. She accidentally exposed it. She just won't admit it yet. Halloween. The day fans believed she had secretly tied the knot. But Amy knew the truth. And she knew the cameras knew it too. And she knew Season 8 was building toward a storyline she wasn't allowed to spoil, not even accidentally. Still, what she didn't realize was this. The hardest part wasn't hiding a secret. The The hardest part was figuring out whether she would one day want the rumor to be true. Rumors had always followed Amy, like shadows that stretched longer than the truth. Some were harmless, some annoying, and some cut deeper than anyone online could imagine. But this time, the rumor felt heavier, almost strangely intimate. Amy secretly married Brian on Halloween. The timing made sense to fans. The aesthetic matched her personality. The vibes aligned with everything she'd ever loved. Halloween wasn't just a holiday to Amy. It was a mood, a memory, a season where she always felt free to be herself. Dressing up, decorating, diving into the spooky fun, it was one of the few days of the year when she didn't feel judged. So, of course, the idea spread like wildfire. Of course fans believed it. Of course gossip pages turned it into breaking news. But Amy knew the truth, and the truth was messy. Halloween came and went, not with vows or rings or a wedding cake, but with a quiet dinner, candy for the boys, a horror movie marathon, and Brian sitting beside her, warm and calm, like someone who wasn't trying to rush life. There was no aisle.
No dress.
No first dance. Just real life, sweet, simple, imperfect. Yet the rumor persisted. And Amy unintentionally added fuel to the fire the moment she began using the name Amy Laverne Creations. Her Instagram story flashed for a few seconds, her signature, her label, her brand name written in her messy, gold acrylic handwriting. Fans froze the frame. Fans zoomed in. Fans analyzed every swirl of the paint. Laverne. Brian's last name. Comment sections exploded. She's definitely married. She slipped up. She spoiled her storyline. She said Brian and her were planning a Halloween wedding. She's lying to keep TLC happy. But Amy wasn't lying. She also wasn't married. The truth was beautifully simple and heartbreakingly complicated. She chose the name before marriage, so she wouldn't have to choose it after. A small act of hope, a whisper of possibility. She didn't want to rebrand later. She didn't want to start from scratch again. And somewhere deep inside, she didn't want the world to see another name change as another messy chapter. This time, she wanted peace, longevity, consistency, and maybe a love. Yet naming her art after Brian wasn't about owning him or being owned. It was about choosing something stable, something good, something she wanted to believe in. But one person didn't take the name reveal lightly.
Tammy.
When the cameras captured her reaction, subtle, stiff, tight-lipped, it sent waves through the household. Tammy wasn't angry. Not exactly. She just didn't understand. She had seen Amy fall fast before. She had watched her sister give her heart away too quickly. She had witnessed the aftermath when those choices broke her. And Tammy wasn't willing to watch that happen again. Not when Amy had finally found confidence. Not when Amy was finally rebuilding her self-worth. Not when Amy was becoming someone who didn't need a relationship to validate her. Tammy wasn't against Brian. She was against heartbreak, Amy's heartbreak. But what she didn't know was this. Amy wasn't rushing. Amy wasn't repeating old patterns. Amy wasn't choosing a man over herself. She was choosing growth. She was choosing expression. She was choosing identity. And the identity she chose, ALC, Amy Laverne Creations, wasn't a secret wedding announcement. It was preparation. It was possibility. It was the name of a woman who finally believed she had a future worth planning for. But even as Amy explained this online, the rumor machine never slowed down. Gossip pages continued posting wedding theories. Fans kept dissecting every detail. And behind the scenes, the network, TLC, noticed. Because if Amy had truly spoiled part of Season 8, if she had unknowingly revealed a storyline ahead of time, if she had confirmed something the producers weren't ready to air, there could be consequences. But consequences weren't what worried Amy. What worried her was this. What if the world believed she was lying? What if people stopped seeing the truth and only saw the gossip? What if Brian felt pressured before he was ready? What if all the noise drowned out what was actually happening between them? Because the truth wasn't a rumor. The truth was real. The truth was quiet and slow and delicate. And it would take much more than a Halloween rumor to reveal it. The rumors didn't fade. If anything, they multiplied. Every time Amy posted a picture, whether it was her art, her kids, her makeup, or a simple selfie, hundreds of comments followed her like a loud, echoing chorus. Are you married? Where's the ring? Why are you using Brian's last name? Did TLC tell you not to say anything? Girl, we know you're hiding something. Amy tried brushing it off at first. She had dealt with gossip for years. She understood the rhythm of reality TV fame. But this time, there was a different kind of weight pressing down on her. It wasn't the rumor itself. It was the expectation. People weren't just asking if she was married. They were waiting for her to be. They were predicting it, pushing for it, almost demanding it. And for a woman who had rushed into her first marriage, for a woman who had stayed too long in a relationship that suffocated her, for a woman who had finally rediscovered her own voice, that kind of pressure wasn't harmless. It was triggering. It made her question her pace, made her doubt her choices, made her feel like she was repeating history, even when she wasn't. Michael had once been her forever. At least, that's what she believed when she said, I do. They had built a life together. They had brought 2 little boys into the world. They had planned futures, decorated holidays, shared every messy part of real life. And then everything cracked. Arguments,
Distance.
resentment, loneliness, inside a marriage that didn't feel like home anymore. Amy worked so hard to convince herself she could fix it. She tried to stay strong, especially for Gage and Glenn. But staying strong didn't mean staying silent. And one day, the silence finally broke. The custody battle, the stress, the emotional exhaustion, the overwhelming pressure of being both a mom and a public figure. She had walked through fire, trying to protect her boys while also trying to protect her own heart. So now, with Brian, she told herself, slow, easy, careful, gentle. But the internet wasn't gentle. The internet wanted answers. The internet wanted content. The internet wanted a storyline. And TLC? They wanted a build-up, something dramatic for season 8. The network knew how to create television. They knew conflict. They knew tension. They knew suspense. So when producers learned about Amy's new business name, heard the speculation, saw the excitement online, noticed the theories swirling around, they didn't step in to clarify. They let the mystery grow. Because mystery meant views. Mystery meant engagement. Mystery meant ratings. But all of that left Amy standing in the middle of 2 worlds, her real life and her on-camera life. Some days, those worlds felt the same. Other days, they felt miles apart. And Brian? He felt the tension too. He wasn't used to the cameras. He wasn't used to the spotlight. He wasn't used to fans forming opinions about him through filtered clips and edited scenes. Some nights, he'd sit beside Amy on the couch, scrolling through comments quietly, then sighing softly, trying not to show her that it bothered him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared off. He wasn't thinking of running away. But he did worry. Not about himself, about her. He worried the pressure would break her spirit. He worried history would repeat itself. He worried she would lose herself while trying to live for the cameras. And one night, after the kids were asleep and the house was dim with nothing but the soft glow of a TV commercial playing in the background, he said something that made Amy freeze. Amy, you don't have to prove anything to the world. Her eyes lifted slowly. She heard the words, but they sank indifferently. You don't have to explain the name yet, he continued. You don't have to announce anything. You don't owe people your timeline. Not even on TV. Amy swallowed. Because deep inside, she knew he was right. She didn't want people thinking she needed a man to define her. She didn't want people assuming she rushed into another relationship. She didn't want to feel like she was living for approval. She wanted to live for herself. For her boys. For her art. For her progress. But those fears couldn't stop her from recognizing something else too. Brian wasn't Michael. Brian wasn't her past. He wasn't her mistakes. He wasn't her trauma. He was patient. He was gentle. He was present. And that presence made her feel safe. But safety didn't erase the noise. Safety didn't erase the pressure. Safety didn't erase the whispers that grew louder every day. And Amy knew one thing for certain. As the cameras rolled for season 8, as fans waited for her next chapter, as speculation continued to rise, Her journey was just beginning. And everyone, her family, her fans, the network, and even Brian, was about to witness the truth unfold. The morning after Brian's gentle reminder, Amy woke up before the sun. The house was quiet, rare, peaceful, almost sacred. Gage was curled up with his blanket. Glenn sprawled across his toddler bed like a tiny tornado who had finally run out of energy. Even the air felt still, like the world was giving her a rare moment to breathe. Amy slipped out of bed, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and stepped into the living room. Her art supplies were scattered everywhere. Brushes in jars, canvases leaning against walls, piles of paint tubes and glitter, and half-finished projects that glowed faintly under the warm lamp. Her eyes drifted toward the small silver soda sitting on the table. The one she painted black. The one she decorated with gold letters. The one she signed with her new brand name, Amy Laverne Creations. Even just looking at it stirred something complicated inside her. It wasn't just a business name. It wasn't just a placeholder. It wasn't just a cute detail for fans to talk about. It was a symbol of her past, a symbol of her survival, a symbol of a girl who once lived on diet sodas because water scared her and loneliness made everything taste better. A symbol of humor, pain, and growth all mixed together. And at the same time, it was a symbol of her future. A future she wasn't sure she was ready to explain. She picked up the can, turning it slowly in her hands, tracing her gold signature with her finger. She whispered to herself, "Why does a name feel this heavy?" Because names meant identity. Names meant commitment. Names meant change. And change, even good change, could rattle the soul. Especially when you had spent years trying to rebuild yourself from the inside out. Amy's phone buzzed suddenly, snapping her back to reality. A text from Amanda. "Girl, you awake? We need to talk. Call me." Amy sighed. Amanda never texted, "We need to talk," unless something was brewing. And with season 8 filming underway, with their family spread thin and stressed, with Tammy still distant and hurt and emotional, something was always brewing. Amy tapped the call button. Amanda answered immediately, her voice sharp but worried, the way older sisters talk when they pretend to be calm but definitely aren't. "Amy Lynn, you better tell me right now. Did you marry Brian without telling nobody?" Amy nearly choked on her own breath. "What?"
No.
"Amanda, what are you talking about?" "Girl, the internet is on fire. People saying you changed your business name to his last name. Some guy on TikTok claims he saw y'all at the courthouse. Fans arguing about it in all the Facebook groups." "Oh my God," Amy whispered, covering her face. No, we didn't. Amanda, I just used the name for the business. That's it. TLC is making everything look mysterious. I didn't think it would blow up like this." "Well, it did," Amanda replied bluntly. "And your sister Tammy is mad." Amy shut her eyes. "Of course she is. She thinks you're hiding stuff from her again." That hit harder than Amy expected, because that feeling of drifting apart, that pain of miscommunication, that wound that kept reopening, it was real. It was raw. And it wasn't fake for the cameras. Amy's voice softened. "I'm not hiding anything from her. I just needed something that was mine. Something that wasn't tied to the past, or the show, or the family fight. Something that felt like a fresh start." Amanda sighed, her tone softening too. "I get that. I do. But Tammy don't. And you know how she gets. She thinks everything is personal. Everything is a message. Everything is a sign you're leaving her behind." Amy felt her chest clench. Because deep down, she knew Tammy carried abandonment like a scar she couldn't stop touching. And Amy had pulled away these past months. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion, out of needing space, out of trying to protect her peace. But even healthy distance can feel like betrayal to someone who's hurting. Amanda cleared her throat. "You need to talk to her. Before the cameras twist it. Before it becomes another fight. Before she says something she can't take back." "I know," Amy whispered. "I know. I just don't know how." Amanda didn't sugarcoat. "Well, baby girl, you better figure it out. Because the world is watching. TLC is definitely watching. And most importantly, Tammy is waiting. After they hung up, Amy sat there quietly, letting everything sink deeper and deeper until her heart felt heavy with the weight of it all. The rumors, the pressure, the name,
The past.
the future, the broken pieces between her and her sister. It wasn't just that people thought she was married. It was that people thought they knew her life better than she did. Amy placed the soda can artwork back on the table and whispered, "This was supposed to make me happy, not start another fire." Inside the quiet living room, surrounded by her art, her memories, her fears, and her hopes, she made a silent promise. It was time to talk to Tammy. Face to face. Sister to sister. Not for the cameras. Not for the show. Not for the fans. But for the bond that built them. The bond that might be breaking again if Amy didn't fight to save it. Amy stared at the clock, watching the minutes crawl. Every tick felt heavier than the last. Tammy hadn't responded yet. Not a single text. Not a call. Not even a poke through the group chat. The silence was deafening. She rehearsed her words again in her head. Simple, honest, direct. I didn't marry Brian. I'm using Laverne for my brand. I love you. I don't want to fight. I just need you to hear me. But rehearsed words rarely survive face-to-face reality. Finally, her phone buzzed.
Tammy.
The message was short, sharp. We need to talk.
Now.
Amy's stomach nodded. She knew that tone.
No emojis. No softening.
Just Tammy, direct, unapologetic, wounded, and waiting. The drive to Tammy's house felt endless. Every red light, every slow car, every unexpected turn pulled her deeper into anxiety. Amy clutched the steering wheel as if it could anchor her, could steady her trembling heart. When she pulled into Tammy's driveway, the older sister was already outside. Arms crossed. Eyes locked.
Silent.
Imposing. Amy swallowed. She could almost hear every beat of her heart thundering like drums of war. Tammy, she began, but Tammy cut her off with a sharp gesture. Don't start with a soft voice. Don't. Just tell me what's going on. Amy exhaled slowly. Her lips quivered, but her voice was steady. I didn't marry Brian. I just changed my business name. Amy Laverne Creations. It's about my art, my life, my new start. Tammy's gaze didn't soften. It didn't flinch. It was still fire and hurt and confusion all rolled into one. Laverne, Tammy repeated. You just threw my name, my trust, our bond into question. You don't get to just pick and choose what's private, Amy. What's ours? Amy's throat tightened. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted to make you feel abandoned. Tammy cut in again, sharper this time. Just what? Just do your thing? Just ignore me? Just pretend like the past, all the fights, all the years don't matter? I can't do it anymore, Amy. I can't. Tears stung Amy's eyes, but she forced herself to breathe. I know I've pulled away. I know I've hurt you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But this isn't about leaving you behind. It's about me finally finding something that's mine. Something I can control. Tammy's expression flickered, a brief shadow of softness, quickly swallowed by the wall she'd built over months of disappointment. You always control things, Amy. That's the problem. You control, manipulate, spin it your way, and the world thinks you're fine. But I feel everything. I feel abandoned. I feel ignored. And it hurts. Amy took a careful step forward. I'm not trying to control you. I'm not trying to manipulate anyone. I needed to breathe. And I didn't know how to ask you for permission to do that. For the first time, Tammy looked unsure. Her arms dropped slightly. Her eyes glimmered with the vulnerability Amy hadn't seen in years. Permission? Tammy whispered. You think I have to give you permission to live? Amy shook her head.
No.
I don't. I wanted to let you know before you heard it from anyone else. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Silence fell between them. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's heavy with emotion, regret, memory, and hope. Tammy's voice broke. I don't even know how to start over, Amy. How do we fix this? Amy stepped closer, reaching out. just letting her hands hover near Tammy's shoulders. We start by talking, by telling the truth, by not letting rumors, assumptions, or misunderstandings drive a wedge between us. We start by trying together. Tammy blinked. She looked at Amy, really looked. For the first time in months, the older sister's guard seemed to crack. Together, Tammy repeated softly. Amy nodded.
Yes.
Together. And for a brief, fragile moment, the weight lifted slightly, not completely, not forever, but enough to take the first step toward healing. Because some wounds take years to mend, and some bonds take even longer. But both sisters knew neither was ready to give up. Not yet. The next morning, Amy sat at her kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, sunlight spilling over her scattered sketches. She studied the soda cans she had arranged like tiny monuments on her desk, each one painted, signed, and transformed into a symbol of her journey. Tammy had left after their long talk, but something in the air had shifted. It wasn't perfect. The tension wasn't gone. But there was a crack in the wall, a sliver of hope. Amy picked up her paintbrush and dipped it into a bold, golden hue. The letters ALC shimmered as she carefully traced them on a small canvas. Amy Laverne Creations, her new identity, her new life. It wasn't just art.
It was a statement.
A declaration. A reminder that she could be both a mother and an artist, a sister and an individual, a survivor and a dreamer. Her phone buzzed. A message from Brian saw your post. It looks amazing. Proud of you. Amy smiled softly. She typed back quickly, her fingers trembling just slightly. Thanks. Means a lot. Can't wait for you to see the collection in person. Her thoughts drifted to the boys, Gage and Glenn, who were racing around the living room in their usual whirlwind of laughter and chaos. Amy watched them, her heart swelling. Every giggle, every tumble, every tiny victory reminded her why she fought so hard for her health, her art, and her life. Meanwhile, Tammy was across town, organizing her own day. Skin removal surgery behind her, weight lost, confidence regained. She had finally discovered what it meant to feel free in her own body. Her mornings were no longer filled with dread or exhaustion. They were filled with purpose, with new routines, and with Andrea, the partner who had come into her life with patience, laughter, and unwavering support. Tammy had her own little art corner now, too. Sketching, coloring, experimenting. It wasn't the same as Amy's creations, but it was hers. Personal, private, healing. The sisters weren't working side by side just yet, but they were healing in tandem, each in her own way. And sometimes, that was the first step toward real reconciliation. Amy glanced at her calendar. Halloween was coming. The day she had planned for her wedding with Brian. Her heart fluttered with nerves and excitement. Everything felt different now. Different from the chaos of past seasons, different from the hurt, different from the constant battles and misunderstandings. She was building her own life. One painted stroke at a time. One healthy meal at a time. One honest conversation at a time. Later, Tammy would call her. She always did, sometimes short messages, sometimes long streams of text full of emojis and sarcasm and affection. But that night, Amy felt a quiet peace. She felt ready. Ready to face the world, ready to share her art, ready to embrace the love she had waited for, ready to step fully into the life she was creating. She took a deep breath, letting the sunlight fill her lungs. Her eyes softened as she looked at her boys, their laughter ringing in the kitchen. Amy smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt whole. And somewhere, not far away, Tammy smiled too. A small, private smile. The sisters weren't perfect, and their journey wasn't over. But the first cracks of light were breaking through the long, dark clouds of their past. Hope, they realized, could be fragile, but it could also be fierce. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Amy. Brian had been by her side through every step, some days patient, some days exasperated, but always supportive. Wedding planning was nothing like she imagined. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't stress-free. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and entirely her own. Amy was determined. Her wedding would be unique, unforgettable, and true to her, and that meant it had to be haunted. The venue search had been grueling. Old, creaking houses with foggy windows and winding staircases became her obsession. Brian followed her patiently, often shaking his head with a grin, muttering, "You know this is for real ghosts, right? Not just Halloween props?" Amy ignored him. She had a vision. A haunted house wasn't just a location, it was symbolic. It represented love that had survived chaos, life that had persisted despite hardships, and a family that had grown stronger through adversity. Meanwhile, Gage and Glenn were bouncing between rooms, carrying tiny ghost decorations and helping Amy test every spooky corner for maximum effect. "Mom, this one's scary," Glenn squealed, pointing at a dusty corner. Amy laughed, tousling his hair. "Perfect. That's exactly what we need." Tammy, however, wasn't invited to the inner circle of preparations. She didn't complain, it was her choice. But she heard about it through family updates, occasional photos, and group chat notifications. The tension between the sisters had not disappeared. They weren't enemies, but they weren't best friends either. They were navigating a fragile space, both trying to live their lives without letting past grudges dictate the present. As Halloween approached, Amy's excitement grew. Every dress fitting, every floral arrangement, every eerie centerpiece became part of her story. Brian, always trying to keep the energy light, teased, "Are we planning a wedding or a haunted house tour?" Amy shot him a look that was equal parts amusement and warning.
Both, she said simply.
The night before the wedding, Amy stood in the partially decorated venue, the air thick with candles, cobwebs, and the faint smell of old wood. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. Everything felt surreal. The culmination of years of heartbreak, struggle, weight loss, emotional growth, and personal reinvention had led her here. Brian came up behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You ready?" he asked softly. Amy nodded, her eyes shining with emotion.
"Yes."
"Let's make some memories." Outside, the wind howled. Inside, laughter, love, and creativity filled every corner. The haunted house, with all its shadows and secrets, had transformed into a sanctuary, a place where Amy could celebrate herself, her love, and her resilience. As she set up a final candle, Amy thought briefly of Tammy. She hoped her sister was happy, wherever she was. There was still love there, always, even if it was complicated, imperfect, and quiet. For now, though, Amy focused on her new life. A life she had built, piece by piece, with courage, creativity, and heart. That night, she went home exhausted, her mind buzzing with excitement. The haunted wedding wasn't just a dream, it was about to become a reality. And for the first time in years, Amy Slatton felt in control of her story. The morning of Halloween arrived with crisp air and golden sunlight that filtered through the old trees surrounding the venue. Amy woke up earlier than usual, heart racing, mind alive with anticipation. Brian was already up, fussing over last-minute decorations and rehearsing his vows quietly in the corner. "Morning beautiful," he said, smiling. "You ready to be a married woman?" Amy laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think so. I hope so." Gage and Glenn were buzzing with excitement, dressed in miniature ghost costumes their mom had insisted on, insisting they were part of the wedding crew. "Mom, do we get candy after the wedding?" Gage asked, bouncing on his heels. Amy laughed, ruffling his hair. "Of course, sweetie, but only if you help set up the candles first." Inside, the venue had transformed into a spectacle of eerie elegance. Flickering candles lined the corridors, cobwebs were carefully draped over antique furniture, and small haunted details filled every nook. It was spooky but magical, a perfect reflection of Amy's personality. Brian approached Amy, holding her hand tightly. "You look incredible," he whispered. Amy's heart swelled. She had never felt this kind of confidence and joy before. Years of struggle, heartbreak, and growth had led her here, to a place where she could fully embrace herself and her family. As guests began arriving, The energy in the house grew electric. Friends and family, dressed in costume, marveled at the haunted charm of the venue. Some whispered in awe, others chuckled at the creativity. But all eyes were on Amy, who walked through the hallways with Gage and Glenn by her side, radiating excitement and love. Tammy, surprisingly, did not attend the wedding. It was a conscious decision, both from her and Amy. The rift between them was still unresolved, but the absence didn't dampen Amy's spirit. She had built her day around love, resilience, and family unity, not lingering grudges. The ceremony began in the dimly lit main hall. Candles flickered against the walls, casting long shadows that danced with the movement of the guests. Amy's heart pounded as she watched Brian step forward, hands slightly trembling. Everything felt surreal, and yet perfectly real. "I promise to love you," Brian began, his voice steady but emotional. "Through every haunted hallway, every storm we face, every joy and heartbreak. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your family forever." Amy blinked back tears, her voice cracking slightly as she replied, "I promise to love you, to trust you, to build a life with you full of laughter, art, family, and adventure. You've stood by me, believed in me, and for that, I promise to always stand by you too." As they exchanged rings, the flickering candlelight reflected in their eyes, illuminating the depth of their journey. The room was silent except for the soft echoes of whispered congratulations and the children's giggles. It wasn't a traditional wedding, but it was perfectly them. After the ceremony, the reception was alive with laughter, music, and movement. Amy and Brian shared their first dance under dim lights, spinning slowly as Gage and Glenn watched, clapping in delight. The haunted theme made everyone smile, and the creativity of the decorations sparked awe and conversation. Throughout the day, Amy reflected on how far she had come. From heartbreak and self-doubt to weight loss, emotional healing, and personal growth, every challenge had led her here. This day was not just a celebration of love, it was a declaration of resilience, of identity, and of the power to rewrite her own story. As the sun set, shadows lengthened, and the haunted house became a cozy sanctuary filled with love. Amy took a deep breath, looking around at the smiling faces of her children, her new husband, and the friends who had supported her journey. Her heart was full, her spirit light, and for the first time in a long time, Amy felt truly at peace. Say 12 when you want part 12. You said, 12 ChatGPT said. Here is part 12 continuing from part 11. Part 12, Amy's new identity and artistic journey after the wedding. Life settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly different for Amy. She had entered a new chapter, not just as a wife and mother, but as a woman reclaiming her identity. Her Instagram, once a window into her personal life and family chaos, now showcased her creative experiments. Each post revealed a meticulous blend of color, texture, and symbolism, with Amy experimenting in ways that reflected her personal growth. She called her new brand Amy Laverne Creations, blending her own identity with Brian's surname, not a declaration of marriage yet, but a deliberate step toward consolidating her life and art under a single banner. Her latest piece was a bold monochromatic canvas, topped with a black spray-painted soda can. She explained to her followers, "This isn't just a can. It's a symbol, a reminder of my past, my struggles, my growth, and everything I'm leaving behind." The gold paint says Sod, my autograph, and ALC, Amy Lover and Creation. Fans had mixed reactions. Some were confused, others inspired. But Amy didn't mind. She was creating for herself first. "This is my voice, my therapy, my joy," she told a follower who asked why she chose a soda can. "It represents my history, the habits I've outgrown, the mistakes I've learned from." She reflected on the infamous term suddies, which she and Tammy once used to describe the diet sodas they drank obsessively. Those cans had fueled many of her past struggles with weight and health, but now they became the foundation for her art, a symbol of transformation rather than indulgence. Amy's personal evolution was mirrored in her creative identity. Brian supported her every step of the way. He often posed as an audience for her new pieces, offering feedback while maintaining a quiet respect for her artistic autonomy. Amy found comfort in this partnership, a love grounded in mutual growth, understanding, and shared dreams. Amid this creative awakening, Amy also focused on her health and well-being. She and Tammy had made significant strides with weight loss surgery, skin removal, and lifestyle changes, but Amy recognized that real change required emotional resilience too. She embraced therapy sessions, meditation, journaling, and structured routines that allowed her to balance motherhood, creativity, and self-care. Even the smallest victories mattered. Teaching Gage and Glenn how to bake a low-sugar treat, completing a complex painting, or simply enjoying a quiet morning with Brian became moments of triumph. Each day, she reinforced her sense of agency, proof that she could thrive independently while nurturing the people she loved. Family dynamics remained complicated. Tammy was still absent from some milestones, and old tensions lingered. But Amy learned to navigate the emotional turbulence with patience and perspective, acknowledging her sister's choices without letting them overshadow her own happiness. The wedding, though lacking full familial presence, had cemented Amy's confidence in her ability to create joy on her own terms. By the time Amy posted her first piece for sale, Amy Laverne Creations had already captured the attention of fans. A local collector, Katie, purchased a piece, marking Amy's first step into the business world. Every brushstroke, Amy wrote in her post, represents growth, healing, and the courage to be myself. This was more than art, it was reclamation. Every stroke, every color choice, every symbolic detail told the story of Amy's life, the pain, the triumph, and the relentless determination to build a future shaped by her own hands. With Amy Laverne Creations gaining momentum, Amy's confidence surged. No longer just the reality TV mom, she had become a creative entrepreneur, ready to assert her identity outside of her family and the camera lenses. Launching her first website was a pivotal moment. Amy meticulously designed each page, showcasing her art, detailing her process, and telling her story. She included personal reflections about transformation, growth, and the challenges of overcoming unhealthy habits. Her followers weren't just buying art, they were buying into a journey, a narrative of resilience that Amy had lived and embodied. However, fame brought rumors. Some fans speculated that by using Brian's last name for her brand, Amy had already married him in secret. The timing, coupled with the upcoming Halloween wedding, fueled gossip across social media. Amy had to address the speculation carefully. "I haven't married yet," she clarified in a confessional. "I wanted to use Laverne early, so I wouldn't have to rebrand later. My art is me, and this name will stay whether or not I tie the knot tomorrow." The explanation helped calm most fans, though some remained skeptical. Regardless, Amy remained unfazed. Her focus was her art, her family, and her own sense of stability. Amid the chaos of social media, she found balance at home. Brian provided support, gently nudging her to take breaks, enjoy quiet moments, and celebrate small victories. Her sons, Gage and Glenn, were growing fast, and Amy was learning to manage motherhood alongside her creative endeavors. She often incorporated them into projects, encouraging their curiosity and allowing them to explore creativity in safe, playful ways. Amy's artistic process also became a metaphor for her personal growth. Each project reflected past struggles, the diet sodas, emotional eating, toxic relationships, and transformed them into something beautiful and empowering. Even the black spray-painted soda can, once a symbol of unhealthy habits, became a centerpiece of her identity as a creator. Through her art, Amy communicated messages of resilience, self-love, and reinvention. She discovered that personal healing and professional ambition were not mutually exclusive. Instead, they intertwined, reinforcing her strength and expanding her horizons. While fans marveled at her artistic talent, Amy also recognized the importance of transparency. She openly shared the emotional journey behind each piece, emphasizing that creativity was not only about aesthetics, but also about processing life's complexities. Art became therapy, storytelling, and empowerment all at once. By the end of this phase, Amy had achieved something profound, a sense of agency over her narrative. No longer defined solely by the drama of reality TV or family dynamics, she had created a personal legacy that celebrated growth, love, and self-expression. Her brand was more than just a name. It was a declaration of independence, a tribute to resilience, and a foundation for the future she envisioned. Amy's life had taken on a rhythm that felt unfamiliar yet exciting. Between running Amy Laverne Creations, caring for her sons, and navigating her relationship with Brian, every day brought new challenges and opportunities. Mornings started early. Gage and Glenn were lively, full of energy and questions. Amy relished these moments, encouraging curiosity and often turning mundane tasks into creative lessons. Whether it was mixing colors for a painting, learning patterns in everyday objects, or observing nature, Amy transformed small experiences into opportunities for learning. Even her son's laughter became part of her creative inspiration, weaving joy into her artwork. Brian played a supportive role, often staying in the background but always attentive. He helped with logistics, problem-solving, and, importantly, offered emotional stability. Amy found herself relying on his calm presence more than she expected, particularly during high-stress moments like coordinating art shows or preparing for major orders from collectors. As her artistic reputation grew, Amy faced the pressures of managing public perception. Fans expected updates, glimpses into her family life, and teasers about the wedding. Yet, she knew that oversharing could compromise her personal life. Amy carefully curated what she shared, ensuring a balance between transparency and privacy. The holiday season added both stress and excitement. Amy decided to host a small creative workshop for fans and local artists, merging her personal growth story with a community-building initiative. Participants would learn techniques she had developed while exploring the themes of transformation and resilience. The event sold out in days, proving that her influence extended far beyond reality television. Meanwhile, Amy and Tammy's relationship remained complex. Despite the lingering tension, Amy felt a subtle shift, a desire to rebuild bridges, if only partially. She understood that forgiveness and family were intertwined with growth, but she also knew that protecting her emotional space was essential. Amy's journey was her own, and while she loved her sister, she refused to compromise her peace for unresolved conflict. The preparation for her Halloween wedding with Brian became a symbol of culmination. Not just of their love, but of Amy's ability to reclaim agency over her life. From selecting a haunted venue, a nod to her playful, unique spirit, to crafting meaningful personal vows, every decision reflected her journey. Brian admired her independence and creativity, recognizing that the woman he loved was capable of achieving her dreams while still nurturing the relationships that mattered most. Amid all this, Amy never lost sight of her artistic mission. Each completed artwork represented progress, a tangible reminder that challenges could be transformed into beauty. Her signature pieces, the Soda-Can series, bright color explorations, and experimental textures, continued to garner attention, solidifying her as an artist in her own right. By the end of this chapter, Amy had achieved an equilibrium that felt hard-won. Motherhood, love, and creativity were no longer competing forces, but harmonized elements of her life. She had become a beacon of resilience, inspiring not only her sons but also countless fans who watched her navigate hardship, healing, and growth with honesty and courage. The air on Halloween was crisp, tinged with the scent of autumn leaves and distant bonfires. Amy and Brian's wedding was not just a celebration of love. It was a testament to transformation, resilience, and self-empowerment. The venue, a delightfully haunted estate, reflected Amy's personality perfectly, whimsical, bold, and unapologetically unique. Candles flickered along winding corridors, and hidden alcoves held surprises for the guests. Every detail had been meticulously planned, not for show, but as a reflection of Amy's journey. Gage and Glenn were radiant, wearing tiny matching outfits that mirrored their mother's quirky sense of style. Their laughter echoed through the halls as they darted between rooms, adding life and joy to the celebration. Amy watched them with a sense of accomplishment and serenity. For the first time in years, she felt fully present, truly grounded in the moment. Brian stood patiently, his eyes reflecting admiration and deep affection. Amy walked down the aisle with confidence, carrying not just a bouquet of flowers, but the weight of her past, transformed into courage. She smiled, feeling every challenge, every heartbreak, every triumph converging into this singular moment. The ceremony was intimate yet electric. Vows were exchanged with heartfelt sincerity, blending humor, love, and acknowledgement of the paths that had led them here. Amy's voice wavered at times, but each word was powerful, grounded in truth. After the vows, the reception unfolded like a living memory. Music, laughter, and art intermingled seamlessly. Amy showcased a live painting session, turning her wedding into a communal creation, symbolizing that growth and beauty are never solitary. Guests watched as colors and forms emerged on canvas, an allegory for Amy's life itself. Messy, vibrant, and ultimately triumphant. Yet, amid celebration, Amy remained reflective. She thought of Tammy, her sister, and the ongoing complexities between them. While the rift remained, Amy realized that healing was not about perfection but understanding and self-compassion. She resolved to continue fostering love without sacrificing her own well-being. The night concluded with fireworks illuminating the haunted estate, mirroring the brilliance of transformation. Amy, holding Brian's hand, whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." She knew that challenges would arise, but the foundation she had built, creativity, courage, and connection, would carry her through. In the weeks that followed, Amy continued her art, expanding Amy Laverne Creations, mentoring young artists, and sharing her story with authenticity. Fans and followers watched eagerly as she navigated motherhood, marriage, and personal growth, serving as a living testament to resilience and reinvention. Looking back, the journey from struggling with weight, heartbreak, and family conflict to carving her own path was nothing short of extraordinary. Amy's life had become a narrative of empowerment, reminding viewers and herself that identity is not static. It is built, rebuilt, and celebrated continuously. As the Slatton sisters continued their own journeys, each navigating success, family, and health in their unique ways, Amy stood as a beacon of possibility. The story of Amy Laverne, mother, artist, sister, and survivor, was no longer just a tale of struggle. It had become a story of triumph, creativity, and hope for all who watched, inspired, and believed.